When Bruce Lee died in 1973, he left behind an unquestioned legacy in his films. But beyond his films, there is another legacy, in his martial art, Jeet Kune Do. This is not a movie on Bruce Lee. It is the first and only training film on Jeet Kune Do by Bruce Lee himself. To compile this film, we have had the complete cooperation of the Bruce Lee estate, enabling us to draw, for the first time, from Bruce Lee's private training films and videos, as well as his audio records and his own training and research notes. The film is narrated by Bruce Lee, with additional input from his son Brandon Lee and from Dan Inosanto, the man Bruce chose to carry on his Jeet Kune Do.
My last name is Lee, Bruce Lee. I was born in San Francisco in 1940. My martial art is in Cantonese, Jeet Kune Do, the way of the intercepting fist.
In case you have missed the recent news, Jeet Kune Do, of which I am the founder, has been elected and accepted into the Black Belt Hall of Fame in America. This marks the first time a recently developed form of martial art is nationally accepted. No, Jeet Kune Do is not thousands or even hundreds of years old. It started in around 1965 by a dedicated and intensified man called Bruce Lee. And my martial art is something that no serious martial artist can ignore.
I met Bruce Lee in 1964 through Ed Parker, who was my Kempo karate instructor at that time. And it was the first year of the first international karate championships held in Long Beach. When Bruce arrived in the United States, he had the training in Wu-style Tai Chi, sometimes in Hong Kong they call it Unga. And he had the, of course, training in Western boxing. He had training in fencing from his brother. That's Epee, that goes from toe to head. He had training, obviously, in Wing Chun. And the other area was the training he had received in, they call it Buk Pai, or it's Tam Toi. He knew 12 sets in Tam Toi. And then believe he traded with a Choi Li Fat man. So those were the arts that Bruce brought into the United States. In the beginning, he used the Wing Chun as the base system, or the first system. But as time went on, he went away from that, started to extract different things from different systems and put it to his personal use. That's why we say absorb what is useful and reject what is useless for you. That's the concept. Okay? He says using no way as a way. In other words, it's not a Japanese way, it's not a Chinese way, it's not a Korean way, it's not an Okinawan way, it's not a Filipino way, it's not an Indonesian way. He's saying using no way as the way. You are the way. Okay? Then he's saying using no limitation as a limitation. That's the concept in Jeet Kune Do. That means I don't limit myself to a Filipino style or an Indonesian style or a Malaysian style. I use what is useful for me, because at certain times a certain art may be useful under a certain environment.
Kung Fu is originated in China. It is the ancestor of karate and jiu-jitsu. It's more of a complete system, and it's more fluid. Kung Fu can be practiced alone or with a partner. Practicing alone, they involve form. Some imitate a crane, a monkey, a praying mantis.
Martial art include all the combative arts like karate or
Judo.
karate, judo, Chinese kung fu or Chinese boxing, whatever you call it. All those. You see, like Aikido, Korean, I can go on and on and on. But it's a combative form of fighting. I mean, it's not, some of them became sport, but some of them
are still not. I mean, they use, for instance, kicking to the groin, jabbing fingers at the eyes, and things like that.
He mixed his trapping into grappling. He had 32 different sequences, as you could see in The Game of Death and the Way of the Dragon, those two films. He was getting into grappling, the face locks, the head locks.
Originally, Bruce taught us various different trapping methods. For instance, if the punch was to come and we were to trap it, we would come back here and we would lock up. This would be the lock-up positions that we would use.
To me, okay, to me, ultimately, martial art means honestly expressing yourself. Now, it is very difficult to do. I mean, it is easy for me to put on a show and be cocky, and be flooded with a cocky feeling and then feel like pretty cool and all that. Or I can make all kinds of phony things, you see what I mean, blinded by it. Or I can show you some really fancy movement. But to express oneself honestly, not lying to oneself, and to express myself honestly, that, my friend, is very hard to do.
Ever since the big boss, there seems to be a wave, a hot wave in fact, of finding another Bruce Lee among all types of people, particularly martial artists, ranging from karate man, hapkido man, judo man, etc., etc. Forgetting about whether or not they possess the ability to act, just so as they can halfway decent to kick or punch, and hopefully knowing a few tricks or gimmicks, the producers will make them a star. Now let's stop about here. Is it that simple to become a star? Well, I can assure you it's not that simple. Also, I can tell you that as more Bruce Lee's films are shown, the audience will soon realize not only in acting ability, but in physical skill as well, they will see the difference. For example, in The Way of the Dragon, my skill is matched with an American champion, Chuck Norris, who happens to be a 7-time winner of both the All-American Open and World Karate Championship as well. Then there is Bob Wall, the 1970 heavyweight karate champion, plus Wang Yanjik, the 7th degree Hapkido expert, which some audience have seen him in the film called Hapkido. Of course, it is only movie making, people will say, but I'm sure that the audience are not so insensitive as to not be able to see and judge by themselves and compare these men's speed, power, rhythm, coordination, versatilities, etc., etc.
I started training with my dad really as soon as I could walk. I mean, my dad was a really diligent trainer, and he always had people over at the house practicing.
My dad had a circle of students that were close to him, and so they were friends of our family. And one of those men, Danny Inosanto, continued to be my teacher, so it's kind of a nice unbroken line.
I have his books at home with all of his underlining and his notes in them, and it's fascinating to see where he drew his sources from, from what sources he drew. He's got books on Western fencing at home that he would use, on boxing. I remember he always used to say that you want to try and absorb what is useful, discard what is useless, and add what is essentially your own, and that was kind of his credo in creating Jeet Kune Do.
When people ask me the question in interviews generally what my style is, I usually say, well, my father created the art of Jeet Kune Do while he was alive, and I have been trained in that. because it's simple to say that. However, I actually truly feel that it's a little bit too simple to say that, because Jeet Kune Do was my father's very personal expression of the martial arts. He intended it to kill a lot of sacred cows. So I always feel a little bit silly saying that I practice Jeet Kune Do, although I certainly have been trained in it. Yeah. It would be more accurate to say that I practice my own interpretation of Jeet Kune Do, just as, frankly, everyone who practices Jeet Kune Do does, because that's what it was intended to be. Danny, my Sifu, always talks about teaching Jeet Kune Do concepts. In other words, teaching someone the concepts, a certain way of thinking behind the martial arts, as opposed to teaching them techniques. To me, that kind of illustrates the difference between giving someone a fish and teaching them how to fish. You know that old story, right? You can teach someone a certain block, and then they have that block. Or you can teach someone the concept that lies behind such a block, and then you have given them an entire area of thinking that they can grow and evolve in themselves. They can say, ah, I see, so if that's the concept, then you could probably also do this, right? Yeah. And that's, I think, a lot of what lies behind Jeet Kune Do, and that is then dedicated to creating a really creative, free-form martial artist.
You see, actually, I do not teach, karate, because I do not believe in styles anymore. I mean, I do not believe that there is such thing as like Chinese way of fighting or the Japanese way of fighting or whatever way of fighting, because unless human beings have 3 arms and 4 legs, we will have a different form of fighting. But basically, we have only 2 hands and 2 feet.
Unless we have other group of beings on Earth that are structurally different from us, then there might be a different style of fighting. Now, why is that? Because we have 2 hands and 2 legs now. The important thing is how can we use it to the maximum? In terms of path, well, straight line, curved line, round lines, they might be slow, but depending on the circumstances, sometimes that might not be slow. And in terms of legs, you can kick up straight, same thing, right? Now, and after all that, then you ask yourself, how can you honestly express yourself at that moment? And being yourself, when you punch, you really want to punch. Not you want to punch because trying to avoid not getting hit, but to really be in with it and express yourself. Now that is to me the most important thing, and that is how can I, in the process of learning how to use my body, to understand myself. Now, the unfortunate thing is, now there's boxing, which use hands, judo, which is throwing. Now, I'm not putting them down, mind you, but I'm saying one thing that is a bad thing, and that is, because of style, people are separated. They are not united together, because styles became law, man. But the original founder of the style started out with hypotheses. But now it has become the gospel truth. And people that go into it, man, became the product of that. It doesn't matter how you are, who you are, how you are structured, how you are built, how you are made. It doesn't matter. You just go in there and be that product. And that, to me, is not right.
So styles tends to not only separate men, because they have their own doctrines, and then the doctrine became the gospel truth, that you cannot change, But if you do not have styles, if you just say, well, here I am, as a human being, how can I express myself totally and completely? Now, that way, you won't create a style, because style is a crystallization, that way, it's a process of continuing growth. First, we use the feet. And then we use the elbow. In fighting,
There is a finger jab, there is a punch, there is a back fist, and the thigh kick. It depends on where you hit and what weapon you will be using. I can use my longest weapon, my thigh kick, against the nearest target, your kneecap. This can be compared to your left jab in boxing, except it's much more damaging.
You name it, man. We
use it all.
You have to, you see, because, I mean, that is the expression of the human body. I mean, everything. I mean, you know, not just the hand. And when you're talking about combat, well, I mean, if it is a sport, now you're talking about something else. You have regulations, you have rules. But when you're talking about fighting as it is,
rules.
with no rules.
Not real fighting.
Well, then, baby, you better train every part of your body.
A good martial artist is like water. Why? Because water is insubstantial. By that I mean you cannot grasp hold of it. You cannot punch it and hurt it. So be soft like water and flexible.
Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
How can I maintain lightning speed without sacrificing tremendous punching power?
I believe I found the cause of my ignorance.
You'll see a Jeet Kune Do punch. It's very scientific and practical, especially in street situations.
Okay, I'm going to start off with the basics. Normally we were taught in the right lead, but I like to go with the left and right lead, so I'm going to demonstrate in the right lead, okay? Now when the punch comes, you parry it across like this, and as you do so, you strike, okay? Slow motion, 1, see? 2. You can do it together, or you can do it separate. You could catch and then go, or parry and then go, or do it together. When you do it together, you're going to hit it. I'm going to give you the side view over here. Slow motion, 1. See? That's slipping on the outside, slipping on the outside. We do a lot of drills. As I said, we incorporate from many different systems. Okay, so the first basic is to slip and hit. Again, a slow motion, slip and hit, okay? Slip and hit, slip and hit. Now, as they punch, I'm going to slip inside and hit. Slow motion, slip, inside and hit, slip, inside and hit. Now you can do it together, or you can parry slightly ahead of your cross that comes this way, or you slip and hit on the opposite side like that. Okay? Okay, that's your basics. Okay. Let me illustrate this slowly. As the focus glove comes out from your trainer, I want you to slip, cross, hook, cross. Slow again. Parry, cross, hook, cross. These are the basic drills that we were taught to follow up. But they can be found in Western boxing. They can be found in Filipino boxing. This one here, when you slip, you cross, you hook, you cross. However, you can slip first, then hook, then cross, then hook. Again, slip, hook, cross, hook. We can also, when they jab, parry this hand, cross it here. When they move back, you cross, you hook, you cross. Again, slip, cross, cross, hook, cross. Again, slip, cross, hook, cross. Last time. Slip, okay, cross, hook, cross. Okay, that's your basics.
That was just an arm movement. Watch now. You see, there was only arm and shoulders. Shoulder was kind of tense too. No, definitely, it's a tense deal. Later on, you will, you know, check the different. Now, the feet was involved a little bit just now. It was fine. Shoulders too tight. Notice that in the beginning, when I say that you just involve only arm and shoulder. Now, your hand, the last time when I saw you was very, very good and fast. Now let's see if this can do it. Now that, let me see another one. You got to involve your feet a little bit more. You see, hand and feet. Got a hand and feet. Go pretty good.
Now watch, I think that when I attack you in a reactionary type of a thing that tightening on the shoulder, now watch now, you, now, watch when I try to attack you, I think when you react to it, you know, then you just do not tense yourself too much, you know, you just then react and just boom, go into it. Now that, I just say, use only the hand just now, I say. Now, boom. You see, when you move your hand and feet, boy, it makes a world of difference. You see, now, you should be a little bit more relaxed in the beginning. Aha. It's getting there, my friend. Watch now. Good. That one was pretty good. Pretty good. No, that was a little bit too tight. Now watch this one. Good. Now that could be used in film. Here we go.
Okay, let's say that this person is standing here. At this point, for purpose of illustration, I might use what they call the sachet, okay, that they use in Savate, which is like that, see? When I come in, I can go into Wing Chun. At that point, I might flow into Western boxing, okay? At another point, I might go into a lock similar that you might use in Jiu-Jitsu, and for the purpose of camera, I'll take the person down like this and lock the person here, and maybe go into any system that employs this type of lock, whether it be Jiu-Jitsu or Aikido or Kali or Penjak Silat. Now you notice that we went from system to system without a flow. Okay? I might stay out here, use any particular kick, break into Wing Chun range, and right from here, use a Muay Thai elbow, all right? And for the purpose of camera, I'm going to go slow and come into various lock position over here. Okay? This is what we call the Jeet Kune Do blend. It is not a system where we go from discipline to discipline without a thought process. And this is very important in the concept of JKD.
The karate punch is like an iron bar. Whack. A Jeet Kune Do punch is like an iron chain with an iron ball attached to the end, and it go whang, and it hurt inside.
Hayward Nishioka, the Japanese-American national judo champion, who is also a black belt holder in the Shotokan style of karate, ran a scientific test in a California university to find out the difference between a karate punch and a Jeet Kune Do punch. And the finding is that indeed the Jeet Kune Do punch is more powerful and destructive than the classical karate punch.
And when you do punch, now I'm leaning forward a little bit, hoping not to hurt any camera angle. I mean, you gotta put the whole hip into it and snap it and get all your energy in there and make this into a weapon.
To reach me, you must move to me. Your attack offers me an opportunity to intercept you. Don't charge him blindly.
In combat, distance is a continually shifting relationship, depending on the speed, agility, and control of both fighters. It is a constant, rapid shifting of ground, seeking the slightest closing, which will greatly increase the chances of hitting the opponent.
Okay, so I'm going to start off first with the footwork system, because this is the mobility system or the transportation system or the system of delivery, okay? Traditionally, when he started off in 1964 when he taught me, we raised the left heel up. This thing is pointed in, and this is what he referred to as the Bai Zhang stance. like this, okay? So I'm going to start off first with the basic footwork. This is a step and slide shuffle, step and slide back. Okay, so this is the first two. Advance, retreat, move to the right, and move to the left. In the beginning of those earlier years, in 1964, they always went with the right lead. But as time went on, we decided to go both left and right lead. So we again practiced our footwork with advance, retreat, move to the left, move to the right. Then we advance and retreat in one motion, and we retreat and advance. Double advance, double retreat, double left, and double right. This should be also done on the right lead, as I'm doing here very slowly, okay, and switching over as so, okay. The basic footwork which we use, okay. This method here, he taught us also, is slide and step. And slide and step advance. So you slide the step, then you take a step out. Slide, and then step, slide and step, slide and step. And left lead, it will look something like this. Slide and step back, slide and step back. Then you have something that looks like your step and slide shuffle, but it's not. That's what they call a push shuffle. You push off, and you push back. Rather than take a step here and slide, you push, and you push back. This is what we refer to as the push shuffle on the right lead. Then you'd learn it on the left lead. Push shuffle, push shuffle, push shuffle, push shuffle. Okay, after that he taught us the circle. The circle we learned the quarter turn, which means I'm going to turn as if your opponent is here, we move. As if your opponent turns that way, you move, okay? Turns this way, we move. Turns this way, we move. Now your opponent's circling this way, so we move. So we learn to circle around like this. He circles this way, we move. Circles this way, we move. We do this again in the right lead also. Okay, so the man is circling this way, we move. Circles 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 this way, he moves. Then we reverse it. This way, your opponent's moving, so you just move laterally, move around, moving around, okay? All right, this is your transport system that we use, or what they call delivery system.
This is on combination kicking. Now you will notice a difference. In the beginning, you tend to over-chasing yourself. In other words, you're covering too much distance. Therefore, when you kick, then your center of gravity is moving forward too much, and the form in kicking is greatly affected. Now, the reason you're going back because your body was leaning too much back. Now, that's what is called a commitment kick. I mean, when you try to go through something, when you're trying to really kick to hurt, then you would lean back, but you won't do it in a combination kicking. Boom. No, you see, you are rushing yourself there. I mean, you should really, in the beginning, just take your time and just go boom and boom and now. You see, you still, it's not so much on the physical. Mentally, you are chasing yourself out, Now, watch this now. In slow motion, bum and bum. But you see, the body line is always there instead of overreaching, you know what I mean? You kind of rest back, but as you progress on, though. Here we go. 1 and 2. Just easily, you know what I mean? Here we go. And 1, that's good. 2, and then once you get that, then you go into the kicking form, make sure that it is right, and 2, and 3. Now you are more in control now. You are more thinking of 1, 2, 3. And don't just, think of 3 already. That's even better now. There is snap at the end in this one too. The other one, you are just, doing a form and a boom and a boom and a boom. You see, all you need to do is just really snap the leg and just step and slide into it. Boom and a boom and a boom. That's right. Good. Now you're not over chasing yourself. Now you are pacing yourself right. Here we go. 1 and 2 and 3. Good. Now, the last one, though, you were a little bit off balance, but there was definitely a doom, doom, doom in there, you know. Here we go. Kick me. Boom. And boom. Here we go. Boom. Boom. You got to bring the leg back quick. You see, you let it dangle out there too long. Bring it back. You got to bring it back. You got to bring it back. And go boom. And boom. You see now, you see how you just boom, and then you lay it out there, but without bringing it back as soon as you can. Now watch this again now. Boom, boom, boom. You know, you should go boom, back, boom, back. You know what I mean? Really.
The fighting measure is the distance the fighter keeps in relation to his opponent. It is such that he cannot be hit unless his opponent lunges fully at him.
Martial art has a very, very deep meaning as far as my life is concerned, because as an actor, as a martial artist, as a human being, all these I have learned from martial art. If you wish to train punching, then punch. If you wish to train kicking, then kick.
The power from my kicks and punches are bursting. I demonstrated a side kick on Ken Knudsen, a powerful Goju stylist that moved so fast that he felt as though his eyeballs were still where he was standing.
Now, first of all, I noticed that in this tape, that as it progresses, your feeling is more involved in the technique, and consequently, your technique also improves. Now, the foot at the ending position in impact is kind of dangling a little bit. Watch it now. Right? I mean, it's not a definite substantial straight line directed at it and, you know, hit it square and then come back. Good. Now, that was a pretty good reaction. Good. You're pretty loose here. I see your hands dangling loose. And here we go. One more time. Pretty good. Now, that was really quick too, you know. Did you notice that? See, the thing to watch out really is the initial, a little bit yawning there. The thing to watch out is you have to, the initial part has to be fast. But also that when you finish the technique, you got to bring it back fast too. So in other words, you got to be fast from beginning to end. In the spin kick, you will notice a very good lesson in there. Now, just now, it was a little bit off. The good lesson that I mentioned, now, you are very much in control of the movement. By too much control, therefore, you are kind of concerned about the execution. Therefore, you kind of, you know, like, really tight. Boom. Now, that was a pretty smooth movement. But now watch this now. Now, right now, I'm telling you to, you know, really just forget about it. Just do it. Now, boom, you see, right on the target. When you just ease the burden of your mind, you just do it. Now watch the next two kick now. Just go boom, right on the head, man. And good speed too. And boom, boy, right on the head. See, now that's James Coburn in there, kicking. You see what I mean now? You really just shoom, and go into it.
You can feel the difference when I put my body behind the kick. I mean, you got to put the whole hip into it and then pour your energy in there and make your kick into a weapon.
Now, let's see what... Now, in this one, I want to see the initial speed and suddenness of your attack. This is just a simple attack, I think a side kick. And I just wanted you to see how, go in there. Now, you're bouncing now for the sake of bouncing. Now, boom. Now, that one's not there. Now, that one now. You have good intention, you made up your mind, you just go. Not bad, not bad. Now, notice your kick when you finish. You just let it drop down, you do not bring it back quick enough. Now, your initial was quick. If you bring it back quick, the whole kick would just look like a boom. Now, again, you see, you did not bring it back again. You move, and boom. Good, very good suddenness. Again, you notice your leg, you did not bring it back. Now, boom. Good. Now, I really like the suddenness, of your... Maybe just a little step there, but listen, man, it passed. Boom. Now, you see, you're moving your leg, but your shoulder is a little bit. Now, that was pretty good. Your shoulder may be a little bit tense. The upper body and the lower body has to be united. Now, you see now, I don't think we mentioned this because your leg was, you see, you let it stay and then back. Boom. Now, see, definitely, your initial move has, really improved. Really improved. Relax and move. 1, 2, 3. Now, that was good. That was good. Boom. A little bit low. Boom. Good. Now, this is the flexibility now. Now, I want you to watch your left leg, with a stationary leg. Now, watch the stationary leg one out. The first one, you didn't make it. Now, the second one, you didn't. Now, watch this now. Watch it. Boom. You see how it really straightened out and you let all the weight rest on the heel and it just reach easily. Now, this is the side kick going over. Now, listen to this now. I like your very good natural feeling on the first one, though the kick was not too good. I mean, you see how it just really, very smoothly it go up there. Now, the second one, you want to control your foot position a little bit. Maybe you are too much control in there. Watch now. You know what I mean? Make it not as natural as the first one. Boom. Mm-hmm. You see now, when you do it right, man, when it touches, your left leg is all stretched out, and it's just an easy type of a thing. Now, I think we are comparing. I let your leg dangle out there. I asked you to do it because, so you will get a feeling of it. Now you're going to bring it back quick now. Watch this now. And, you see? It was kind of a little bit off balance in the last one, but that's all right. Now you're going to go sideways. Watch now. I like the second one better than the first one. There was more directional in it. Good. Here we go. One more time. No, too low. Second one's okay. See, it come back in one straight line. Here we go again. Now watch this illustration. You gotta exaggerate the bringing of the leg back, you see? Back. Okay, watch it again now. You see, exaggerate the pulling of the leg back. Make it look much more faster and more forceful. Watch this now. I like the naturalness of your kick. Watch this now. You see, at the end, there was really the feeling there, you know? Get the back jumping up and down. Hey, good. Nice one. Oh. That's it. One more. Check you. Really good. You want to. I see you're happy.
Physically, how can I be very so well coordinated? That means you have to be an athlete. That means you got to have jogging and all these basic ingredients, right?
Well, my dad made a point at the time that he was training that there were a lot of martial artists who weren't paying enough attention to their instrument, you know, and certainly the instrument of the body is what you're going to be using in your practice of the martial arts. So I think it's very important to keep up the tempo, so to speak.
I'm interested in that point you reach where you actually fail from exhaustion at something, whether it's a weight training exercise or a cardiovascular exercise. I'm interested in seeing just how much that point is a physical point and how much it's a mental point. And so that's what I do. I jump a lot of rope, I run, I ride a life cycle. I much more prefer to go out and actually ride a bicycle or run and, you know, see some scenery. And then I work out down at the academy, which is on some levels a very cardiovascular workout. Some of the classes I take, like the Muay Thai kickboxing classes, a hell of a cardiovascular workout.
Yeah.
And then some of the classes are more technique oriented, so you're not huffing and puffing so much as you are just learning individual techniques. And then I work out at the weightlifting gym, where I do 2 body parts a day, pretty much, and then I break that up occasionally, so I do like back and biceps on one day, chest and triceps on another day, or something else, and delts and legs on the third, or something like that. And it was just switch it. I found that was generally the best thing to do, whether it was with a high weight or a low weight. And what I understood the process to be was that working with heavy weights would build mass, whereas working with low weights was intended to build like density and really carve out the muscle a lot more. And since I personally have never been interested in getting large as much as just getting cut, I tended to work with a lower weight. But then to me, getting cut is also mostly a question of vascularity. It has to do with how much body fat you're carrying. So I've always done a lot of cardiovascular work because that's also real world power too. I mean, I suppose it's good if you want to pick up heavy objects that have large muscles, but cardiovascular stamina is something that seems to come in handy a lot more often than a large muscle would. You go down to the academy and you try and do a 3-minute round on the Thai pads, and I don't care how big your muscles are, if you don't have a real good cardiovascular system, you're going to be dead in about 45 seconds, and I'm still going to be going.
Now, you want to kick it when it's coming to you.
I'll try it.
You let your foot jam. Drive the sucker. You're pushing. Okay, now, Jim, go and kick a bean back and give me the thrust the sucker in Kingdom Come. Center. Now, Jim, face the sucker. Now, you are cutting your half now.
That's okay.
How's that?
Beautiful. No, I mean, I want you to be happy. You're still kicking a little bit off to the side. Kick him directly. Good. Now don't kick it again, but don't turn your body so much when you finish. Try to still face him when you finish, okay? Good. Now kick the sucker when he comes back. Not yet, not yet. That's it. Ah!
During this time period, we used to train because we didn't have any tie pads, so Sifu Bruce advocated the use of using the football forearm guard, and which we don't use this anymore, but this was very prevalent during that time period. This here is the original punching shield, that his own personal punching shield, in fact. This was used as in the Way of the Dragon. If you notice this, he had one part. I had one arm, he had the other arm, and this was used in that picture, Way of the Dragon. This was used in Enter the Dragon. This was actually, its original use is actually used for baton training in Japan, and we just modified it, and we used a special helmet, a boxing headgear we had, and we used it, and this became part of our training, some of the training tools that we use when we used to spar.
Literally, on television, they had to shoot it, they had to overcrank and shoot it in slow motion because otherwise it just looked like a special effect when he moved. I mean, the man was fast. He was deadly fast. I've really never encountered anyone in all of my training since who was as fast.
You can certainly train for speed. I think that training for speed is, number one, it's a genetic factor. Yeah, certainly. There are some people who are just gifted. They are fast naturally. But I think training for speed, on the whole, is a question of muscle memory. Speed in an individual movement is something that, I mean, we're coming down to, thousandths of a second now. If you and I, or even if I and some completely untrained person were to stand side by side facing a focus pad, and when a red light blinked, both flick out a jab, I'd probably win by a couple hundredths of a second. But once you're talking about speed with repetition of movements, to be able to go like that, that's muscle memory. An untrained person would be like, they would falter in their movements because they haven't trained their muscles, or they haven't trained their perception as well to be able to react quickly to a variety of different circumstances.
Martial art is a combative form of the art of expressing the human body. You have to train yourself into it. I mean, you better train every part of your body, keeping the continuity going, bending, stretching, everything. You just keep it moving. See, the idea is running water never grows stale. So you got to just keep on flowing. When the opponent expands, I contract. And when he contracts, I expand. And when there is an opportunity, I do not hit. It hits all by itself. To me, at least the way that when I teach it, all type of knowledge ultimately means self-knowledge. So therefore, they're coming in to and ask me to teach them not so much of how to defend themselves or how to do somebody in. Rather, they want to learn to express themselves through some movement, be it anger, be it determination, or whatsoever. So in other words, what I'm saying, therefore, is that he is paying me to show him in combative form the art of expressing the human body.
Jeet Kune Do is not a style.
I cannot teach you, only help you to explore yourself, nothing more. Here it is, natural instinct, and here is control. You are to combine the two in harmony. Not if you have one to the extreme, you will be very unscientific. If you have another to the extreme, you become all of a sudden a mechanical man. Now, James Coburn is a peace-loving man. I mean, he's really, really nice. I mean, super mellow and all that. I mean, you know, I mean, now he appreciates the philosophical part of it. Therefore, his understanding of it is deeper than Steve.
The martial arts, which are an integral part of my life, come entirely from my father. But the martial arts, I'm completely beholden to my dad for. I mean, he started me in the martial arts when I could walk. He trained me my entire life until he passed away. And then even when I continued my training, it was with one of his students.
You know what I want to think of myself? As a human being. Because, I mean, I don't want to sound like, you know, as Confucius say, but under the sky, under the heaven, man, there is but one family. It just so happened, man, that people are different. A good martial artist does not become tense, but ready. Not thinking yet, not dreaming. Ready for whatever may come.
When you move down the road towards the mastery of the martial arts, and you are constantly moving down that road, you end up coming up against these barriers inside yourself that will attempt to stop you from continuing to pursue the mastery of the martial arts. And these barriers are such things as when you come up against your own limitations, when you come up against the limitations of your will, your ability, your natural ability, your courage, how you deal with success and failure as well, for that matter. And as you overcome each one of these barriers, you end up learning something about yourself. And sometimes the things you learn about yourself can, to the individual, seem to convey a certain spiritual sense along with them.
I don't believe in systems, nor in methods. And without system, without method, what's to teach? I found the cause of my ignorance.
was the first year of the first international karate championships held in Long Beach. And my job was to make sure that Bruce Lee, Ed Parker gave me a certain amount of money to make sure he ate properly and make sure he got back to the hotel room, sort of like his host. And I met him then and grew to really like his personality, and we became very close friends. When Bruce arrived in the United States, he had the training in Wu-style Tai Chi, sometimes in Hong Kong they call it Unga. And he had, of course, training in Western boxing. He had training in fencing from his brother. That's epee, that goes from toe to head. He had training, obviously, in Wing Chun. And the other area was the training he had received in, they call it Buk Pai, or it's Tam Toi. He knew 12 sets in Tam Toi. And then believe he traded with a Choi Li Fat man. So those were the arts that Bruce brought into the United States. What Bruce did, as a relay to me, that he could never learn from the top man, because in those days, Kung Fu practitioners were quite prejudiced, and they didn't usually share the knowledge with other people from other styles. So what Bruce did, he knew that, so what he did would go to the second or the third or fourth man in the system and say, well, look at how would you like to learn Wing Chun? And I'll trade you my Wing Chun knowledge for your praying mantis. Let's say it's Northern praying mantis. And that's what he did, because he knew that the head instructor wouldn't teach him. So he did that in Southern mantis. Southern mantis, I believe he trained straight with the man. But a lot of the styles that he trained in Chinese Kung Fu, the way he picked it up, he would exchange the knowledge of Wing Chun for different styles. And of course it was between him and the person he traded with. So he usually picked the second or third or fourth or fifth man within the hierarchy or of the top five in each Kung Fu system. And then as he approached that, he worked obviously with a lot of Western boxers. A lot of his students were sort of street type fighters. He worked with various different wrestlers and judo man and jiu-jitsu man, and slowly went away from the traditional or the classical way of training in Kung Fu. And he sort of changed the methods. In other words, he did away with the classical traditional ways of forms. But I think he still kept the forms, but he separated between what was the forms and what was the way he wanted to train for martial art. He referred to the forms as martial art gymnastics. And that's the first part that you would see, because when I first learned under Bruce, he was teaching me sets. For the first 6 months of my training, I learned sets. And I was learning a set in Northern Mantis, and the first set in Wing Chun, and a little first part of the Wu system, Tai Chi Chuan. And then within about 3 to 6 months, it's hard to go back in my memory right now, but he said that's not where it was at. And he just completely stopped teaching me that, and went into this, what I call his way of thinking, his way of training. Instead of doing, like in other words, the Wing Chun dummy, for an example, and I think Bruce only knew from 1 to 60, I believe, and he wanted to learn the rest of the Wing Chun dummy, and at that time he did not know, and I think he went back to Hong Kong and tried to learn it, but somehow reason he could not. So he felt that the first 1 to 60 was the very important. Instead of training from 1 to 60, he would take a portion of that 1 to 60 and train that thing over and over and over and over again. That's the way he taught. And then he came to a point where he started to not even follow the prescribed method on the Wing Chun dummy. He just started to freelance it. And that's what he did with the forms. He just took a section of the form and shadow box it, pretty much like a Muay Thai fighter would do. He would shadow box the movements, right? Or like a Western boxer would shadow box. And he would take it out of the form, analyze it, investigate it, and say, no, that's not the way you would actually do it in combat. I'll change it a little bit. And probably, I'm safe to say, he was probably very much criticized during that time period. Absorb what his useful concept is just something that he felt that every individual was different. Therefore, he couldn't really follow his instructor per se. So realizing that you couldn't follow his instructor, he had to find out what worked for him. But of course you have a base system. And so his interpretation is that you could, say, unite Wing Chun and flow right into Jiu-Jitsu, and go from Jiu-Jitsu into Western boxing, and Western boxing out to Savate or out to Muay Thai, and go back and in and out of various disciplines. This was his idea, and he seemed to, as people said at that time, get away with it. But a traditionalist might frown on that, because that's not the accepted way. There are some people that, when you study with them, whatever the style is, they want you to say strictly Chole Fat, or let's say Chole Fat, for instance. Okay, but his concept was that you didn't have to. You could flow from Chole Fat into Wing Chun if you knew how to do it. You can flow from Chole Fat into Western boxing hands. From Western boxing hands, you can flow into Jiu-Jitsu. You can flow into grappling. So absorb what is useful is that identically what he's trying to say is it's from a book called The Art of War, Sun Ji. He says absorb what is useful, reject what is useless, and add specifically what works for you. So that's basically the philosophy behind absorb what is useful. Transcending technique is many ways you could do this, but the techniques really aren't that important. What makes a technique, in my opinion, is the timing, the rhythm. Okay, your personal attributes like your agility, your balance, your coordination, dexterity, stamina, strength for that certain time period. The technique has to fit the individual. Technique has to fit motion, both your motion and the opponent that you're flowing with. That's the important part about technique. So attributes, according to Bruce, were probably more important than technique. Developing speed or stamina or strength, those are attributes that you do use in combat. And that's, I think, what he was trying to say there, that you got to transcend the technique, both physically and mentally. Having no limitation as a limitation, the philosophy behind that is that if you are trained in a particular martial art, which is called a Japanese style, they might see something in another style that they like, let's say another Chinese style. But because of the curriculum, they stay within the boundaries, so therefore it limits what he can use. As having no limitation is your limit, he's using no limit. The boundaries within the Western boxing, let's say that's a boundary because you're boxing, you're strictly using your hands. You're not really using your knee, you're not using your elbow, so it is limited. Wrestling, for the most part, unless it's professional wrestling, you're not allowed to use the elbow, bite, and gouge. So you're limited because that gives you a kind of a structure to work with. Judo is very, very good art. They throw well, they choke well, they strangle well, they arm bar, they leg bar, but there is no punching, so that's limit. So he's trying to say using no limitation as styles do limit to a certain degree. Bruce said that to transcend technique, it has to punch, it has to kick. You don't punch, it punches, it kicks, it elbows, it knees, it head smashes, all right? It does everything. It grapples, it locks, it chokes, it strangles. It was the transcending of self. You don't know how you hit. It hit. It hit by itself without even a conscious effort. That's what he's talking about, that the it. So he's transcending the physical. He told me once, well, I don't know if it's true or not, he said that he could see himself, if there was a person he's fighting, that he never fought the battle from here. He fought the battle from here, and he could see himself and the opponent. He says, I says, let me get this straight now. You mean your opponent's here, and you're not here watching this guy? He says, yes, I'm watching from here. So he had that saying, and I think it's in one of his sayings, he says, be like a wooden doll. It has no ego. It just moves like a wooden doll because you move. So he can absorb it, like he said, you can observe things better from a third person, without critically. Like it's when I train fighters, I couldn't understand why they couldn't see the opening when they were sparring, right? And why they didn't cover this. But when you get in there, you can't see the opening. You could see it from the third person, and that's where Bruce was saying he was seeing it. For a good example, when I played football, if I made a good run, it was so effortless. When you're up there in the stadium, you can see the openings where he should have ran left and right. But when you're running with the ball, you can't see the openings sometimes, right? Your coach from the bench can see it, and your scout up there in the stadium can see where you should have ran left or right, or you should have put on a speed, or should have stopped short and cut to the left or to the right. But when you're in the heat of it, you really can't see it, right? That's what he's saying, that he sees it from a third person. Therefore, he can see the openings. That's why a trainer has to tell his boxer or his fighter when he comes back to the corner, he says, loop with the overhead. He's dropping his hands because sometimes he's so occupied in trying to defeat his opponent, he can't see it because he's not a wooden doll. You have to be formless, as he should tell us. And that's, I think, what he's trying to say. It does it because he's no longer in the body. What Jun Fan was basically, I think its base system was probably Wing Chun, and thrown in with ideas that he picked from Savate, Muay Thai, as he saw it, as he observed, thrown in with various different Kung Fu systems and Western boxing, with Jiu-Jitsu and different things he had learned from different grappling arts from China. And that's the basis of Jun Fan. The liberation of Jun Fan, we get into now what we call Jeet Kune Do. For an example, to expand on what Jeet Kune Do is a very personal thing. Therefore, it is not really a product. Rather, it's a process. It's a process of becoming, and you're constantly changing. The only thing you can be sure about time is it's constantly changing, even the ideas. Okay, so Jeet Kune Do, for an example, if I had one student, he might incorporate only 20%, let's say, Western boxing, as another student might really like it, so he'll use 80% Western boxing. Another person might incorporate 100% Muay Thai. Another person might not like the training, so he might incorporate 10. That's strictly up to him. A person might incorporate grappling. Let's say there's three persons. One person might not incorporate any of it. Another person would incorporate maybe 10%, another person 50%, another person maybe 80% of it. But what is important, that he is exposed to that particular discipline. The way I'm moving now, I use the discipline to develop attributes. That's the key thing, because I believe, like Tai Chi Chuan, for an example, it has a lot of good characteristics that I like. You know, it sort of calms the system down, and it has balance. It promotes balance, and it has good body control when you do it. Muay Thai, the advantage I think there is that they are really, as far as conditioning in the martial art, I consider them to be the most highly conditioned martial artists out there. So I like to incorporate that aspect of it. I leave my students to say, well, do they like the training in Muay Thai better than they like the training in Bando or so on. I allow my students to choose what they like, what they want to do, and what art that they want to gravitate to. And I think this is important. Just as when people go through public school, you should give them a base study course, but you allow them after they come out to pick what they want, whether they want to concentrate on music more, or art, or on math, or on science. So Jeet Kune Do is just the same thing. You concentrate on your effort. A Jeet Kune Do technique can be a boxer's left jab, it could be a boxer's left hook, it could be a boxer's uppercut, and it could be a cross. It could be a Muay Thai kick on the thigh. It could be an elbow from Muay Thai. It could be a knee from Muay Thai. It could be a wrist lock from Jiu-Jitsu or Aikido. It's whatever works. So a Jeet Kune Do technique, you can't really classify a Jeet Kune Do technique. And the way of in the realm that Bruce had it, it's absorbing what is useful for you. Since it is not a style, we use maybe certain disciplines to get certain attributes, to develop certain things. So there is no Jeet Kune Do technique as per se, as the way he founded the idea. Okay? Many people refer to it as a style, but it's not a style, because it's not a style as a product. And as he used to tell me, it is a process. It's just a process of constant growth. And what is Jeet Kune Do for you now might not be Jeet Kune Do for you 6 years down the line, because of age, because of time, a factor of training and things of that nature. Jeet Kune Do now, since there's a lot of disciples that came from Bruce, and I have a lot of students, each is developing it in the way that they think it should be developed. Some people don't want to come out, they want to stay in the garage and teach 1 or 2 or 3 students, that's fine too. Others want to promote it more, get it into the limelight a little bit more, and that's fine too. Like, for an example, Daniel Lee, he teaches Jeet Kune Do, but his main thrust is Tai Chi Chuan. He promotes it through Tai Chi Chuan. As Richard Postillo is more into Western boxing, he's more into kickboxing. He takes that aspect of Jeet Kune Do and tries to push that aspect. Larry Harsel is more into what we call Filipino Dumog, which is grappling, or Layog, which is another form of Filipino grappling, and mixing in with little Chinese China here and there, and Western wrestling, and some things from Jiu-Jitsu and some things from Aikido that he's integrated for himself. So Jeet Kune Do, the only worry that I have is that some of these people might lead their disciples down one particular path and say, this is Jeet Kune Do, and my Jeet Kune Do is the way Bruce would have had it. Then my person might say, no, it's in the kickboxing, and it's in the Thai boxing, and it's in the wrestling. This is the way Bruce would have had it. Okay, that's the only danger that I see. Bruce did hand out certain techniques, but they were used to illustrate a certain point when you might use this at a particular range. And the thing that he used to tell me, there are certain weapons that are good for certain ranges. Like a grenade, you wouldn't use it 5 feet away from you. You might use a dagger. A staff, you might use it for a little bit shorter distance. A grenade would be good maybe if there's a machine gun nest out there 50 yards, and that would be the time to use it. There are certain techniques that are good for certain circumstances. Once a man crashes in and he's in grappling range, you should use it. So there are some people who don't believe in the grappling range, but if you look at any professional boxing match or kickboxing match, they within 2 to 3 kicks or 3 or 5 punches, they're already in clinching range. So you should have a grappling art. You can't afford not to learn it. Okay, some people say, well, I'll finish it all in kicking range, I'll finish it all. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that every system or discipline has its time and place. For an example, Bruce used to ask me, he said, Dan, what's the best way of travel? I says, 747, jet, United Airlines. Possibly. He says, well, if you're going across the street, the jet wouldn't be very much of use, would it? If you wanted to go 2 or 3 blocks, maybe a bicycle might be better than the car. And if you're in the jungles of Amazon, he says, the Porsche that McQueen drives isn't any good because he can't use it under that environment.